We've got a question from Nicholas in Bolingbrook, Illinois, who says, can you help me understand Daniel 9:25? Let's talk about the timing of Daniel chapter 9. Verses 24 through 27 would be the entire section there. And Nicholas's specific question is, how do you get 69 weeks when it says 7 weeks? And isn't a week 7 years? And so wouldn't that be 49 years? How do we get 490 years? Now, all of that's good questions, and it shows that certainly you have been around the block a little bit. You've heard the explanation of Daniel chapter 9, and yet it's not quite coming together. And I can see how you do that when you take Daniel chapter 9, verses 25 through 27, and I want us to I want to just look at that passage of Scripture and read it, and I'm going to actually start out in verse 24. Now, Nicholas, you specifically ask about verse 25, and that's partly where it becomes confusing if you only take verse 25, which let me read now. It says, "Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and rebuild Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince." We've got two bookends, the command to restore and rebuild to Messiah the Prince. It says in verse 25, "There shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times." Now, 7 weeks and 62 weeks. And your question is about these 7 weeks and 62 weeks, and specifically, how do you get 69 weeks when it says 7 weeks? Isn't a week 7 years? Now, you are right that a week is 7 years, as it's used in the King James. If you were to read in the Hebrew, the word here is a word like the Sabbath, the Shabbat. It's a word that means a collection of 7. And so we would talk about a dozen as a collection of 12. This is the Hebrew equivalent of the word septed, if you will, for a collection of 7. So it is 7 somethings, and only by context can you know what those somethings are. And in this case, the context is years, the context in chapter 9 of Daniel. And so 7 sets of 7. So 7 times 7, of course, is 49. So from verse 25, you might think, oh, there's 49 years from the going forth of the commandment to Messiah the Prince. There will be 7 weeks. That is what it says. Which would be 49 years. Now, what you've got to do, and it's a little confusing as you read the King James especially here, that there will be 7 weeks, but then it has a comma, and it goes on, it says, and 62 weeks. Well, 62 is 69. And so you really have to put those together. He says there'll be 7 weeks and 62 weeks, or that is there'll be 7 and I said 69, actually 62. 63, 62, sorry, I'm not very good with my scores. 62 would be 62, so there'll be 62 plus 7. That leaves an extra left over that is yet to be fulfilled. Now, you have to put that together. There'll be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. There'll be a total of 69 weeks altogether. So the King James breaks those up, as does the Hebrew, to tell us after 49 years something is going to happen, and then there's going to be a remainder of time, but it's at the end of the total of that, which is where you get the 483 weeks, actually, not 490 weeks, but 69 times 7 is 483. So there's 1 week left over, and this is where we get this 7-year tribulation, and that comes from verse 24, actually, where it says 70 weeks are determined. And the problem is that 7 and 62 only adds up to 69. So there's 1 more week, and that's where the 7 years comes in. It doesn't actually, you can't get it alone from verse 25. You have to take verse 24, 70 altogether, and then we remove 7, and then we remove the 62. and you end up with this one left over. And so it's that 1 week that becomes the timing of the tribulation. And so then in your question, you're trying to figure out how do you get the three from the 62, how do you get 3.5 years? And actually, you're mixing up some things there. You can't get the 3.5 years from the 62. What you get is the remainder of that period of 70 minus 7 minus 62 leaves 7 left over. And then the 3.5 actually comes from other passages of Scripture. In fact, even later on in this passage, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, as it talks about in verse 27, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. There's that missing week, or that missing 7 in Daniel 9:27. And in the midst of that week, the middle of that week, that's where you get the 3.5. So take 24, 25, 26, 27 all together to build that. Now, it's a somewhat difficult chronology to build. It's much easier to build if you'll take a piece of paper and sort of chart this out and begin to look at it. But when you get the chronology of Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27, I think it is one of the most foundational building blocks to understanding future prophecy. In fact, I would say it's the fundamental building block to understanding the chronology of future history, especially of the time of the tribulation. So Daniel chapter 9, verses 24 through 27 are very important issues that has to be brought about and carried out. So great question there.